colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to welcome you to this session. This is the third day of the conference. Thank you very much for joining our expert discussion, our panel, which will look at the trade and economic development strategy for Russia. In current conditions, the environment is changing very quickly. We have several panelists today, and we will introduce them in due course, and we will pass it over to them. In the meantime, I would like to make a few short remarks. Will you please put my presentation on, and then we will pass the floor to other panelists. Obviously, today we are faced with the big task of increasing growth rates. This is a strategic goal, and in this context, trade policy is an integral part of the general policies. We would like trade policy to make a contribution to economic development. It should not be a standalone thing. We believe that we are now lacking a clear trade and economic development strategy. We have a cost-based discrete model which is not sufficient. We want it to be better weighed and better thought of. We wanted to get favorable trade conditions as we joined WTO, but we are not enjoying the conditions that we were hoping for. Indeed, we got access to various markets with the most favorable state. However, in modern conditions, preference agreements that different countries have are much more important than this most favored status. There's a gap between the Russian capabilities and its economic presence in different markets. In military and political domain, we see parity in terms of economic situation. We are still not a very open economy, and we have a small impact on the world economy. We have low global GDP dynamics, and this is common knowledge. Growth rate in the world economy are low. We see that Russian economic growth rate is lower than for other parts of the world. Within international trade system, since the beginning of the century, we have been building new generation of RTAs. Events like Brexit or election of the new U.S. president introduced certain changes to the situation. However, the overall trend is not likely to change. It will have new biases, but within WTO, we have not been able to make much progress in the way of liberalization. We see that we need to set new targets for the Russian economy and then work towards those targets. Through instruments of trade policy, we should create conditions for Russia to be making a greater contribution to the world economy. We should not be illusioned. We should not think that trade policy will become the main factor for Russia's economic development, but it should be making its contribution. The tasks and goals that we set for ourselves include adaptation to the new evolving economic system, the new generation trade agreements that we have to become a part of. We also need to develop a strategy for active trade policy. We should use all instruments and capabilities of WTO, which we are not doing enough now, and we should come up with new formats of partnerships between the public authorities and the business community, which is today a weak link. We see that the picture is very versatile. There are different countries that are members to different trade agreements. This has been happening since the beginning of the new century, and Russia is not playing a big role in this system as of now. We should be addressing our own problems and challenges to become a part of this system in a smart way. We should look at the interregional trade agreements which are already around, and we should have our own integration agenda. We should create our own free trade zones and join other existing free trade zones using the terms that would be beneficial for us. If you look at the trade relations picture where Russia plays a role, although it's not an integral part of it, the picture is quite big. Eurasian Economic Union is not playing a huge role, and its contribution to the world GDP is not so significant. However, this is an important organization. We have a free trade zone with CIS countries. We have a lot of trading operations with China, and China is supporting its One Belt, One Road policy. European Union has negotiations with the U.S. on transatlantic trade partnership, and Asian countries that we trade with are also involved in integration at a regional level in the form of ASEAN trade or ASEAN plus 6, also known as RAP, and also with in Trans-Pacific Partnership that has been signed, but it has not been enforced because it has not been ratified by the U.S. If we look at the potential benefits associated with such integration, we see from preliminary estimates that we could have good macroeconomic benefits if we were to play it right with the free trade zones, 690 billion and above. It would be hard to do, though, because negotiations are difficult, and in different countries, they may have different interests and different agenda regarding integration. Armenia, Belarus, and Kyrgyzstan are focused on domestic trade. Russia and Kazakhstan are focused on international trade, so their interest for international integration is different. For Russia and Kazakhstan, integration with the EU countries and Asian Pacific region may bring the biggest benefits. We see that Today, there are three main areas for international integration and international economic cooperation. One is multilateralism, where everyone integrates with everyone within WTO. That is a slow-going process. However, there's been some agreements of late 2015, like simplified trade procedures agreements and elimination of export subsidies for agricultural products in developed economies. Not very strong agreements, but we should use those opportunities and promote this. Multilateralism is a way for some countries, several dozen countries, to try to come to an agreement on issues which they believe are important for them. There's a few agreements there. TISA, that is a trade and services agreement. EGA, environmental goods and services agreement, public procurement agreement. So that is an area where one or several countries offer preferred terms and conditions in their individual markets. Within this format, there's also an agreement on liberalization of trade of high-tech products. Within such multilateral activities, we have seen some difficulties in the Eurasian Union. We're a member of WTO, which Eurasian Union is not. There's still many things that yet have to be done. Belarus is not a member of WTO. In the Eurasian Union, we have different membership conditions in different countries. Kazakhstan terms are seriously different from Russian conditions. And there are differences in about 20 to 25 different items. In Kyrgyzstan, the differences are not so important because of a lower volume of trading. The Kazakhstan story can create tensions because there is an emerging need for proper duties on goods from China that first are exported to Kazakhstan. We use different import duties in Kazakhstan and in Russia, so we have to deploy an extra mechanism for import duties. There are some mechanisms that could be used. WTO is an organization that is not a vehicle to move forward, is not a strong engine. However, it sets rules and it also sets a cap on protectionist measures that countries can use. Some people in Russia believe that our country should leave WTO. We should get the best from multilateral agreements, implementation of trade procedures, simplification. We also should do as much as we can to protect Russian exporters, and that is important in the context of the agricultural products subsidies agreement. We are not doing enough in a number of areas. We were supposed to start negotiations last fall on public procurement. We started formal negotiations, but in other three formats, in trades of services and environmental goods, trade on high-tech goods. We have zero presence, and we don't even have those things on our agenda yet. I think we pay insufficient attention to presence in various WTO bodies. We do not have sufficient funding of our negotiating groups in different WTO bodies. We're definitely not doing enough, and it's not up to the requirements that are normal for the kind of country we are, that plays a significant role and makes a significant contribution to world GDP. We need to address existing challenges in Eurasian Economic Union. We should strive for Eurasian Union ascension to WTO. We are still far away from there, and much has to be done. But if we are to work towards that, then we should create a common agenda and develop a common strategy for the member states. This far, there's no coordination work done in that area. We promote Russian businesses' interests internationally, but not enough. We are way behind many developed economies. We have representative offices in a number of places, and we have a development program. But it's not that they are not doing a good job. They have been improving in recent years, but there are some lacking instruments and organizations that could protect Russian businesses internationally. Technically, doing a reform in this domain may be simpler because there are international best practices, and we can look at things that we don't have and make up for this. As an example, I can say that when we have negotiations between the United States and European Union on a transatlantic partnership, business associations play a very big role. They have a better understanding of various constraints that are out there. They have a better vision of what has to be done to protect their interests. So they actively participate in negotiations. Formally, it's European Commission and the Ministry of Trade of the United States, but business communities play a big role, and this way they support their interests. We don't have anything like that. So that's how I see the challenges we are facing, the things that we have to address. We have to develop a new behavior model in the new environment. We have to have a better strategy in WTO. We have to address the challenge of developing Eurasian Union agenda with regard to WTO and in the context of work within trade agreements. And we also have to have better organizations that will support Russian businesses internationally. Now I will pass the floor to Professor Portansky, our first presenter. Over to you, Andrey. Would you please share your vision how trade policy can help us? Thank you, Alexander, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm always very enthusiastic about Gaidar Forum. This is not the first time that I make my contribution to this forum. Let me start by saying that to address problems that we're discussing today, it's important how we respond to the threats that have been identified by Alexei Kudrin yesterday. You may have heard the presentation, or you may have read the presentation in the Vedomosti newspaper, which published the presentation text and a number of comments. The first threat is public administration, the system of public administration, which is not up to where it should be, and also technological development level, where we are quite behind others, and nothing has been changing in the last decade. The problem is very acute. Mr. Kudrin said that even our military officers say that this could become the main challenge for national security, not orange revolutions, not our neighbors, but insufficient technological level. So the problems that we are talking about much depend on the state of Russian economy. Russian economy is the leading economy of the Eurasian Economic Union. It's not like in the EU, where England, France, and Germany played the role of locomotives and pulled the rest of the Union. In Russia, we contribute up to 80% of the GDP. So the state of the Russian economy is very important. Can Russian model be an example for others? Can we become a center of gravity? That is the bottom line that will determine the response to the question that we're discussing. What Russia should do in the new conditions with the emerging trade and economic agreements of a new kind. Recently, we have seen very unusual conditions with high level of uncertainty, the kind of uncertainty that we have not seen before. Why this is happening? What contributes to it? The crisis of international trade system that Alexander mentioned, the crisis in the WTO negotiations at Doha. Economic crisis that still impacts many economies, and some of the new things, the consequences of Brexit and the consequences of the U.S. presidential elections. The latter, I'm going to talk more about. It is bringing in some uncertainty elements in world economic relations. And this is not just me saying this. Many experts, including international experts, have been saying this lately. In recent years, many people said that the world is deglobalizing. Some experts believe that this is the dominating trend, and it is stronger than globalization's trend. I do not subscribe to that. The technology development of information technologies means that the process of globalization is continuing. However, we do see some features of movement in the opposite direction. We see that globalization and deglobalization processes take place at the same time. There's a new term that has been coined recently. I am not a big fan of using foreign terms. However, globalization is a valid term. What is this? This is emergence and development of integration processes in a number of regions. This is local globalization, if I may put it this way. That is globalization. This term was first coined in 1980s. Today, in the context of mega-regional trade agreements, this term becomes relevant again. What is the fate of those regional trade agreements? I'm going to name a few and comment on them. It's hard to say, and the fact that in foreseeable future we are going to see several, to be more precise, three centers of power: the United States, European Union, if nothing bad happens to it. I mean, things like Brexit, and China. These are the three centers which are like global centers or mega-regional trade agreements and countries that will be members to those agreements, Trans-Pacific Partnership, Transatlantic Partnership, and CETA. Smaller agreements. So we are entering this global world. And there's nothing really scary in this. In this global world, states are going to face a dilemma, what they should do next. Whether they should join one of the existing groups, one of the power centers, or should they form their own power center. There's no easy answer for that, and it's a very hard question for Russia. Of course, I will spend more time on Russia now. This is not a question for Russia only. It's relevant to many countries, but it's especially dramatic for Russia.
Now, a few words about the current trade agreements of new type, or mega regional trade agreements, as English language literature calls them. Now, the first sensation that, in fact, shocked the world happened on October 5th last year, when we heard from Atlanta about the conclusion of negotiations on Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP. Some people still claim that the agreement was signed on October 5th. No, wrong. It was signed on February 4th, 2016 in Auckland, New Zealand. And in October, negotiations concluded. It was a major event at the time. And immediately we look with a lack of understanding at the U.S., who contributed tremendously to the possible success of the TPP. And they worked wonders of commercial diplomacy to eliminate all the contradictions. Suffice it to mention contradictions between Japan and the U.S. Those contradictions were removed only 1 month prior to the conclusion of the negotiations. And then Mr. Trump, is about to scrap it all. Well, it's kind of hard to understand. Having said that, ratification of the TPP is ongoing. A number of countries, I think Japan, ratified the agreement. Some other countries are still in the process of ratification. At least 5 countries are doing this. However, there is a discussion among those countries as to what is to be done with this agreement. Continue business as usual? Well, this is what some stick to, some of the 11 countries. Some others suggest that they should revisit the agreement if we go ahead without the U.S. And still others believe that bilateral agreements should replace the TPP. This is the idea entertained by the U.S. Obviously, without the U.S., the TPP cannot fly the way it had been devised. Well, this is a new type of agreement, something that Obama mentioned a few times. Quite a few articles were published on this. The agreement itself, the language of the agreement, was published. In fact, in some instances, TPP goes beyond the WTO provisions in terms of IP rights, in terms of environmental protection, labor relations. In fact, they even adopted a declaration on currency relations. It's not a binding document, yet even here there was an attempt to introduce some kind of regulation. It is a major achievement, the fact that they managed to come up with the state-of-the-art provisions for 12 countries, provisions in terms of trade relations, something that cannot be offered at the multilateral stage now. TTIP, or TTIP, as it is called in the Atlantic community. Well, the first major issue emerged in late August last year, when the Vice Chancellor of Germany, in his interview to the German radio, said that, well, it was a disaster. Out of 30 articles of the would-be agreement, 27, at least 27, are those for which there had been no progress at all. Well, I talked to German colleagues, and they said, look, you should take this with a grain of salt, because this is very much influenced by our internal political developments and internal political struggle. However, some other sources tend to suggest that the EU is very much unhappy about the position taken up by the US. And last fall, the EU believed that the US should reconsider its approach, otherwise there would be no progress whatsoever. Besides, there were a lot of contradictions and arguments. For instance, the argument in civil aviation has been on for 10 years. And in fact, the EU even filed a complaint against the US, and the EU seems to have won this, but obviously the case is going to be appealed by the US. Now, the very approach to regulation is different, the one pursued by the EU versus the one pursued by the US. So there's a lot of things to be reconsidered by one of the parties, I mean the US. However, this is something I saw with my own eyes. In late May, I attended a major conference, US-German conference, and the key topic for the conference was the need to ensure success of the TTIP. Nobody back then believed that the TTIP would grind to a halt. Now, I saw, to an extent, the ruling elites representing members of parliament from Germany and key players from the US. I saw, to an extent, the ruling elites put their bets on the success of this agreement. In fact, this is perhaps the only agreement that has a lot of political substance in it. This is what Victoria Nuland mentioned back in 2013 when negotiations started. She said outright that the agreement is not just about trade. We place our bets with one another. We count on each other in terms of survival of the transatlantic community in the face of the threat coming from you-know-whom, from Asia. Now, the negotiations have been suspended under Trump, and again, I find it hard to believe that this is the case. Well, I personally still have my hopes that Trump would reconsider his approach. Well, on many occasions in the U.S., there were cases when during election campaign, candidate would come up with some ideas, but once he got into office, his attitude would change. But Trump said that TPP would be scrapped and negotiations on the TTIP would be suspended because this agreement does not correspond to the U.S. interests. This is strange. It's very difficult to take in this message as is, because this immediately puts under question the leadership of the U.S., something that has not been challenged since the end of the Second World War. And this leadership has been very much present up to this day, including within the WTO environment. Are we to believe that Trump administration would challenge this leadership, or leadership of this country would be achieved through other means, or we would act just like they would act just like under Khrushchev, showing China Kuzma's mother, as they used to call it? Well, you know, a lot has been achieved in the post-war period, so it would be strange to scrap it all instantly. Quite frankly, I don't understand how this could happen. Now, a few words about other important agreements. This is a RAP agreement. Alexander mentioned that one. The agreement is about to be signed. However, one point I'd like to make it as follows. In terms of its potential impact, it might be quite powerful. In fact, the parties to the agreement would cover over 1/2 of the global GDP. Now, why China plays a major role there? Well, we should not be misled by the fact that Obama did not allow China to be part of the TPP, and instead China leads that agreement. Well, China feels threatened. If major trade barriers are introduced, and this is what is about to happen, the recent two appointments signify that the U.S. would be willing and ready to pursue anti-China line, and China got the message. We know that Chinese economy is very much about export, and China is keen to remove the barriers in the region that is covered by the RAP. They got to export their goods somewhere, so this is the true idea behind China's leadership. No, they got to export their products somewhere. Now, setup. Well, this is a much smaller agreement in terms of the volume of trade and economic potential. This is Canada and the EU, but at least this agreement has been signed. It will become effective tentatively, and then ratification would follow. Well, obviously, this will take a lot of time because 28 governments and parliaments would have to ratify the agreement. But it will become effective this year by means of a tentative protocol. There were some hiccups when Wallonia opposed the agreement, and Justin Trudeau was about to go to Brussels, and then he was told that no, the agreement is not ready to be signed yet, but it was a small delay. But the mere fact of signing this agreement is of importance. It matters in terms of our talk on new formats. And in conclusion, a few words on Russia. I mentioned that for the countries who are not centers of global economic power, a question arises, what is to be done? Our position with respect to interregional trade agreements for the first time was voiced after Atlanta in October and November, when Lavrov first spoke, then President Putin made a presentation, and they claimed that such agreements would lead to trade fragmentation. But over time, our position evolved, and now it is not as tough. So we now are trying to see where and how we could participate in those agreements, and this is where the difficult part starts. You know, why it was so difficult for us to access the WTO? Because we were latecomers. Those who were members of GATT, they just had to come and to sit at the negotiation table. Now, it would be difficult to do, even with respect to RAP. You know, the RAP is perhaps the most promising agreement for us. We don't know whether the others will survive, but RAP, as I said, is quite promising. But the negotiations have progressed a lot, and this is not about politics. This is not about the military issues. This is about participation in global value chains. To an extent, our firms are ready to follow the rules that have been established. This is just one case, and there are many such cases, many such examples. So in this sense, it would be easier to join NATO than RAP today, because it takes only political will and political decision to become a NATO member. It is easier to join the OECD by reviving our negotiations. As you may be aware, those negotiations were suspended back in 2014 due to the Ukraine crisis. So it would be easier to join the OECD. However, it is much harder to join mega regional trade agreements such as RAP. It's a most elusive target for us at the present stage, and I think I did explain the reasons. Well, obviously, this does not mean that we should not try to do that. The same goes for the TPP. Well, perhaps TPP will survive, and Vietnam is a member of the TPP, so we deal with Vietnam. So there is some opportunity for Russia to join that agreement too. So we should think about possibility to join a global group or mega regional trade agreements. And I think this is a more pragmatic approach. Now, another option would be to come up with our own format to offset the existing formats. And I wonder if it's going to be possible at all. To achieve this, our economy should revive from the protracted and sustained crisis. We should demonstrate some unbelievable growth so that others would flock to us. What kind of tools and steps we could employ and make in order to lure others? Well, in Sochi, we talked about APEC and possible free trade zone that might get those countries interested so that the zone becomes a new global center. Well, may God help us. But the thing is that the majority of those countries already are members of either TPP or RAP. And the bulk of their negotiations resources and other resources have been used up already. Well, out of courtesy and politeness, they did come to the meeting in Sochi. Well, maybe we will establish a free trade area with some of those countries, but I think that this is a longer and more difficult route, and this route does not guarantee any success. Although I personally would love to see Russia and the Eurasian Economic Union able to set up such a global center. However, in terms of sheer economy, there are very few prerequisites for that. Well, I guess that's it, what I wanted to share with you. Thank you for your attention. Alexei, thanks a lot. Perhaps I could add, indeed, Trump spoke at length during the presidential campaign about all those issues, but once the outcomes of the elections have been announced, we heard virtually nothing about the TPP. We heard him say some things about NAFTA, about the need to introduce barriers against Mexican-made cars, but he's been pretty much silent about the TPP. So we still got to see what the new administration is going to do after January 20th, but I think currently there are major debates going on as to what should do with the TPP. We were somewhat late with the WTO, and that is why we had to accede on harder terms. And we are being late now. We only embarked upon the road that other countries, Asian countries, have traveled already. So we are behind some 15, 20 years. Maybe the pause that currently is observed under the TPP, well, this pause might help us to breach this gap and to catch up. In fact, not only trade issues are discussed, issues like e-commerce, the need to fight corruption at the national level, interaction between investors and the state. Well, these are the issues that are on the agenda now, and we're too far from being able to discuss this. We don't have even the requisite skills and competence to do this. Alexei, throughout your presentation, you kept referring to Russia's interest with respect to all those agreements. We understand that Eurasian Economic Union may be in a position to pose as a member of such an agreement, but how can we get our partners interested in joining this effort? You kept mentioning Russia's interests. What about interests of other Eurasian Economic Union members? Well, look, I did mention Russia, but I also meant the other member countries. I think I did mention that the Eurasian Economic Union should become a party to negotiations. I remember discussing cooperation prospects at a meeting held by Russian-European Cooperation Chamber, and we considered possibilities of establishing a dialogue between the EU and EAEU. So we do observe some positive signals, and we see that not Russia, but the Eurasian Economic Union is considered to be a participant of, say, possible negotiations, possible cooperation. Indeed, we do have some contradictions, some tensions within this union, especially if we are to consider some external initiatives. We should not forget that before entering international negotiations, the EU members get together in Brussels, and they spend a lot of time to hammer out one common position. It is a long and painful process. I remember how difficult it was some 5 years ago to discuss the issue of agricultural subsidies. Jacques Chirac, the president of France, accused Pascal Lamy, another Frenchman, of not being patriotic enough, because Lamy supported the conditions and terms that would harm France. While there are many such issues that are currently faced by the Eurasian Economic Union. For instance, we have a free trade zone with Vietnam, and there are some issues having to do with the Belarusian participation in this mechanism. So we got to come up with a mandate for the Eurasian Economic Commission to be able to participate in such negotiations. I do hope that our partners like Kazakhstan and Belarus would support such initiatives. The initiatives that are supposed to culminate in establishing strong relations with globalization centers. Alexei, thanks a lot. Indeed, the development of a common strategy for the Eurasian Economic Union is a key challenge for our future progress. You mentioned OECD. Well, indeed, in 2014, unfortunately, due to political reasons, the process of joining the OECD was suspended. Yet, some work is still on. The work geared toward bringing our standards closer to OECD standards in a variety of areas, and the progress has been mixed to date. In fact, this can be considered as a means to eliminate barriers on our road toward the rest of the world. Obviously, if Russian businesses and businesses of member countries feel better thanks to the introduction of common standards, well, this would only serve to slash costs and would help to improve well-being. And with this in mind, I'd like to give the floor to Bill Tompson, who represents OECD and is head of the Eurasia region at the Global Relations Secretariat. So perhaps you can tell us what is the state we're in now. Please, Mr. Tompson. Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to be here. I was somewhat scared because I'm flanked by illustrious foreign trade experts. This is not the area of my expertise. Yet we do address a lot of economic issues in a variety of countries, but not specifically trade. Having said that, a lot has been mentioned already, and I would hate to repeat what has been said, and in general I agree to what has been said. I appreciate the comments of the previous speakers, yet I'd like to add some aspects, some touches to what has been covered. Let's start with the previous session, the session on tax policy. Some of you may have visited that session. And colleagues discussed tax rates at length. A colleague of mine from OECD, Grace Navarro, tried to bring the audience's attention to tax administration and regulation issues. And the audience listened very politely and then got back to the discussion of tax rates. Well, in fact, two presentations were pretty broad anyway, but what I'm trying to say is that we got to think about trade policy in a broad sense. We should not narrow down trade policy discussions to tariffs or barriers. This is about something that touches almost all and any aspect of economic policy of a country. Now, if we are to talk about the contribution that trade policy could make to the Russian economic development, well, I think we have seen a lot of such contributions coming thanks to the accession of the WTO. It's not just direct impacts. This is about all the reforms that were done in this country due to the accession of the WTO. I'm referring to regulation, I'm referring to the IP issues, I'm referring to the simplification of trade procedures. This is about customs reform and so on and so forth. The colleagues are absolutely correct, suggesting that the Russian economy has been performing fairly well, and this is reflected by the doing business ranking of Russia. And the business environment got better, among other things, thanks to the improvements in trade policy. Now, if we are to progress further, I think the most important thing is not to forget that the trade policy could be and should be the anchor for economic reforms, both within the country and in terms of its economic policy. This is extremely relevant. In fact, today, during this session, Alexei started with the reference to Mr. Kudrin's presentation yesterday. Well, this is what I'm trying to say. It's impossible to do anything about trade policy without considering the overall economic policy. I'm speaking now on behalf of myself, not on behalf of my organization. I see some serious pressure in terms of economic policy. And this pressure might result in wrong decisions. It could result in more protectionist policy, and we've seen some steps in this direction, not just in Russia, but also in OECD countries. I remember reading an article that criticized the 2020 strategy in Russia in terms of trade impacts. And then I read another article about the U.S. Congress being reluctant to remove barriers for agricultural products coming from Canada, despite the fact that we have a free trade zone with Canada. So lobbyism is not just about Russia. This is omnipresent phenomenon. And now a few words about the global context. I think that the overall discussion of the mega regional agreements is a testimony to the fact that the WTO has not been able to replicate the success of GATT. It's a huge organization. It's got a very good dispute resolution mechanism. A lot of those useful features have to be cherished and maintained. However, in terms of future opening up of the trade system, the progress has been marginal, exactly because the membership now is so broad. And that is why we see the advent of the TPP and TTIP and so on. Potentially, those are huge blocks. And UK, Europe, US, developed economies that traditionally have been leaders in this process tend to develop a backlash against further liberalization and globalization. Unfortunately, I cannot share your optimism with respect to the U.S. position under the new administration. I just don't know what's going to happen. I see that the political pressure is huge despite all the economic arguments. Now, we at the OECD try to encourage our members to stick to the principles they've been following for over 50 years in terms of openness of the global economy. Yet, we increasingly pay attention to why this backlash is occurring. Well, obviously, one reason is a decade of weak growth. This is not something that went about due to trade liberalization, yet this is something that countries are unhappy about. Now, many issues covered by this new generation of agreements go beyond the traditional agenda, and people, especially in Europe, do not understand the whole system of investment courts or investment disputes courts. There is this whole issue of legitimacy of those courts. Besides, there is a major issue of regulation harmonization, because the key approach pursued by the EU differs dramatically from the one used in the US. In this context, in this global context, against the backdrop of weak global growth, let's look at what Russia is doing. A lot has been said about Russia and the Eurasian Economic Union reaction, and I think that Russia is too big for Eurasia. However, it is too small for the rest of the world. Globally, Russia's economy is not very big. Yeah, it's 80% of the Eurasian Economic Union, but it is a small economy globally.
So it's more important economically than for Russia. And we see some unexpected consequences. I do quite a lot of work in Kazakhstan. They have their issues. Not everything looks great to them. There's been some conflicts, partially because they see some things as one-sided steps taken by Russian Federation, which hurts them, especially after 2014 and the Western sanctions. On the other hand, they've been telling me that near the border, Russian farmers get registered in Kazakhstan because things are simpler, easier, and cheaper there. So we see development there, and that is competition in the regulatory domain. I don't think that they expected that in Moscow when they had negotiations on the Eurasian Economic Union. Alexei Pavlovich has talked a lot about the challenges associated with RAP. In Russia, it's hard to get in. My personal opinion is that this pivot east in Russia is still quite weak. There's been a lot of talk, much has been written about Russian-Chinese relations. The reality, though, is somewhat more modest. There's also a question of Russian-Japanese relations. I think in long term, and there I'm going to say that in long term, relations between European Union and Eurasian Economic Union is inevitable. The geopolitical context should change. Today, we cannot talk about serious, in-depth cooperation, but in a faraway future, Russia is going to be linked to its neighbor countries and European Union. There's been some words said about Brexit. What we do not know is this. There's this one big question mark, the consequences of Brexit for Great Britain. I am a subject of Her Majesty, and this concerns me very much. There's another question which is not so much talked about in Europe. That is the consequences of Brexit for Europe. Without Great Britain, Europe is not going to be the same. And there are quite a few issues there, although I'm not going to go into that now. For Eurasian Union, this means that if EAEU is looking for new members, maybe London will be interested. Great Britain will find itself in the same situation. And the final point, because I understand that I have been talking for too long, is relations between regional agreements and WTO. There's a multilateral approach. We don't see a direct link. We look at what is happening in TPP and RAP. These are very different stories in terms of depth, in terms of spectrum of issues that they address. Even exceptions for the poorest members. These are important things in RAP. There's no direct link. However, it's obvious that if members are at least ready to show conformity, to WTO requirements, they can at least talk about something that can be done in the future. In a different context, this could be a possibility. However, this isn't likely to happen automatically. I will stop here. Thank you. Mr. Tompson, thank you so much. A very interesting presentation indeed. Let me also say that in doing business rating, Russia is making some advances, and that is partially due to some things that we have been implementing in our WTO commitments. despite this progress that we are making in doing business, in international trade section, we are still in 140th position, and we're not making much progress. We have been in 138th place last year, and now we're 140. Permissions for construction projects and a few other things keep us that low. And that's why we are not getting any higher in the doing business rating. We are not getting close to the 20th position, which has been target. Before I pass the floor to the next presenter, I want to ask Mr. Tompson, what do you think of this? Clearly, it's not possible for Russia to join OECD now, but what do you think, how prepared is Russia for that? Do we still have to implement a lot of different requirements to be there? In terms of percentages, I cannot give you a number. What I can say, though, is that we see that much progress has been made in the last 3 years. After the accession process has been frozen up, Russian authorities have become much more active. We see that Russia is doing a lot more in OECD committees and working groups. We've had many discussions on different instruments. It's hard to say at what level of readiness we are, because even if there is some substantial progress in essence, there are still many formalities. Also, despite the fact that the accession process has been suspended, there is still quite a lot of collaboration between Russia and OECD in a number of areas which are global important within G20, BEPS, Financial Stability Board, and other things. So the relations continue, and they are full of life. Okay, that gives us some optimism. Despite political controversies, if the technical work continues, it means that we are making headway. Now, I would like to pass the floor to Professor Volchkova. We have mentioned things like chains of added value and other things. We would ask Natalia to tell us how trade policy helps economic development, or doesn't help economic development for that matter. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this session. And I can say that Gaidar forums over years have been an interesting venue where people make forecasts. Not all of them come true, but the discussions indeed are very interesting. On the subject of trade policies, discussions like this one elevate the level of trade policies, and I think we may see some interesting decisions made before the end of this year, and much has to be done. There are a few forecasts. Trade policy includes many different things, essential to integration organizations, tariff policies, non-trade barriers, and many other things. And it's a big challenge to analyze those things, but we have to do this. There are a few numbers that you see here in this chart. You see export diversification in the EAEU countries' baskets. You also see other things. in the second line, we see how advanced, how complex the complexity level of our national baskets. You can see that compared to the integration centers in China and in the US, we are quite far behind. Our economies are much smaller. If we use that as a share of exported goods, we see that Russian and EAEU export diversification level is very, very low compared to the world centers, world economic centers. The same is true for the complexity level. You see that we are quite far behind. This is telling us that the issue of export is very important and it has to be looked at within the scope of our economic development strategy. There's another thing in this table that is important, that is how much we're involved in added value chain creation. There are different methods to calculate this. There are 3 parameters for each country. That is the share of import coming into the country that is used for further exports. Import is an intermediate step in this chain, in this process. Belarus steps out. 80% of the goods that they are importing later get exported. We know very well what they import and what they export for other countries. This parameter is very low. We do not export a lot of imported products. That brings about some issues. The other 2 lines do not look very good either. How much of the goods that we are exporting get further exported by other countries? You see that all numbers are in the neighborhood of 40%, which is not much. And a still worse picture is the share of export that is coming back to our national economies. There, the numbers are extremely low, in the neighborhood of 1 or 2%. That is very low. With the exception of Belarus, we are in the very early phase, in the very early section of this chain. The higher a country is in this chain, the greater added value is created through integration. So in this context, Russia and Kazakhstan are exporting commodities, raw materials, and that is only the beginning of the chain. A lot of those materials and products are then exported to other countries. As of our involvement in the export chains, we must admit that this is essential, this is a necessity, because it really improves our position in this context. And all of that certainly necessitates certain steps in the trade policy that creates needs for certain new international policies, so that trade policy and trade integration would be a source of growth for our national economies. Another chart that I have demonstrated at many conferences, integration by itself can create growth potential. You can see the results of one study where we looked at the export potential of our individual countries that are members of the Eurasian Economic Union, and we're looking at the export potential of the Eurasian Economic Union as a whole. Here are some goods that have export potential. We have highlighted the categories, and we show the volume of exports that can potentially take place for individual countries and for the Union in general. You see what we have in the group level and at the level of individual countries. The white segments is what we get through integration work. Quite a lot of products of manufacturing industries, high-tech goods, medium-tech goods, and that is looking quite good. Whether or not this potential will be implemented depends on the policies that governments use. This is a chart with doing business performance. Look at the details, look at different components, trading through other countries. This points to some interesting things that show our involvement in OECD, and it also points to some problems. In the first line, you can see the country's positions in doing business rating in general. In brackets, you see the numbers for the previous year, and in the second line, you see the country's positions in the trade across borders. We see that all our countries are very close to one another, with the exception of Kyrgyzstan. We are close to 40 mark, which is not bad because the overall number of countries in the rating is around 200. In transborder trade, Belarus is showing the best results. It's number 30, and Russia is worse because it's number 140. How those numbers were made. You see the breakup of these numbers, that is how long and how much money it takes to conduct import and export operations, and how long it takes and how much it takes for exports to happen. Then we look at imports, transactions. They are looked on the basis of equal goods, same goods for all countries, automobiles, vehicles, and we look at the biggest trade partner in this category. We see that in imports, the costs associated with trans-border crossing Kazakhstan and Belarus have zero, because it's not costing them anything. They ship through Russia, and there is no customs between Kazakhstan and Russia. However, it's a comparison to the import situation. For Kazakhstan and for Belarus, it costs very little to import products. In Armenia, in Kyrgyzstan, the situation may change in some time to come. Exports levels are calculated based on a number of products. Main products in trade with the principal business partners, with the exception of raw materials, agricultural products, and pharmaceuticals. There are different categories of goods for different countries. Another thing that I wanted to draw your attention to, if we were to use these numbers to measure trade barriers for exports and imports in every country, we see that there is a big variation in trade policies in exports and in imports areas. Customs unions countries have integration And trade policy is delegated to Trade Economic Commission. Still, we see that numbers are different in different countries. In Armenia, costs are at one level. In Belarus, time is the same, but export is more expensive. In Kazakhstan, export is much more costly and takes a lot more time. In Russia, import is more expensive, export is more expensive. If you look at the cost of the formalities, and it also takes more time. There's a big variation which characterizes trade policies. It shows us, it tells us that there's a lot of differences in trade policies between our countries, and that should be a subject for discussions between countries which coordinate their policies. Trade policies impact the economic situations of the countries, and much depends on how we go about exports and imports. And that's what I would like to focus in the next part of my presentation. We're comparing exports and imports. Another thing to look at, how we calculated effective protectionism level created by common tariff for the EAEU countries for different categories of goods. We use the same tariff. Essentially, it's not implemented in a number of countries because of their commitments to WTO. If we had a single tariff implemented in all countries in the same way, then we see a high level of protectionism, effective protectionism for some industries in a number of countries, and in some other countries the level of protectionism is negative. The bad thing is it creates export buys. It makes sense to invest in these industries. We look at the changes of the added value, looking at the situation with tariffs and looking at the situation with free trade. This benefit comes from sales of goods only within the country because there are other protection measures. In foreign markets, it does not exist, so it doesn't make sense to export those goods to other countries. So anti-export buys becomes pretty strong. This is a distortion that we observe in a number of countries, and it really impedes export capabilities in those countries. And Eurasian Commission has not been properly weighing up the consequences of using such tariffs and the impact on the exports. I would like to spend the next few minutes talking about imports versus exports. The way people think and the attitude of many people in Russia, it's hard to talk about other countries for me, is such that many people are negative about imports. So we keep saying that export is a good thing and import is a bad thing, which is completely wrong in the general economic context. We know from economic theory that import is the main cause of growing wealth. Buying cheap imported products releases a lot of our capabilities to produce things that we can export. we need to buy cheap things internationally cheaper than we could make things ourselves, so that we can use our resources to produce other things that we can export. Import gives us an opportunity to improve the welfare of the people. For Russia, in the current situation of import substitution, the government has identified a few areas where import substitution must be implemented. Import substitution has been implemented, and we have reduced the volume of imports. In many areas, the import has been reduced by more than 10%. You can see what should be the level of tariffs growth to match that. We looked at the level of welfare. We see that prices are growing. Price index is growing as a result of these steps. We see increased production in a number of sectors that enjoy protection. At the same time, we see that with full employment situation, we see reduced production level in other economy sectors. So the benefit is not making up for the losses, and we see that GDP has been going down due to this import substitution, and people's welfare is getting lower. So our import substitution policy, although we have reduced imports by 10%, has a negative impact on the economy. We have seen the impact on the growth. We see that we may be losing not much, but the rate of growth may also happen. And the last point I would like to make is that the new economic theory is focused on the role of imports. In the theory, we know that part of the performance of the most effective companies has to do with imports. Russian companies have been subjected to comparison to international companies. Importing companies are at least 20% more effective on average than those that do not import goods. It doesn't matter how much they import. If they do import some intermediate level products, they are on average 20% better performing, and that increases their competitiveness domestically and internationally. So we need to look at imports as a source of growth in the economy. It's also about diversification. So trade policy should take that into account. When we look at imports versus exports, we must consider these things and do it in a smart way. Doing this simple exercise, we see that to reduce export costs, to reduce export costs, we need a greater diversification. We need to form our policy in such a way that we should optimize things for development of various sectors of economy. We should have greater diversification for exports. We should use the integration benefits in our exports and import policies. It's important to look at Asia and use integration benefits. This is a source of inexpensive imports. Technologies also do matter in the whole integration story. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Natalia, thank you very much indeed. Very insightful presentation that illustrates the need to align trade and industrial policies. Indeed, we see that a classical Latin American strategy of import substitution via banning import in the long term results in sustaining technological inferiority, and it does not help to bolster up exports. Obviously, any import constraints prevent development of export-oriented sectors, because exporters are the firms who mostly use imported products, and import constraints they face, in fact, prevent them from developing competitiveness in export markets. This is something we should be mindful about, and this is what decision makers should have in the back of their minds. Now, let us see to what extent this would be pursued in the economic policy measures. We still have two more presentations, and they deal with more specific issues. Well, they are more specific on a global scale, but they are very pertinent to Russia, and as viewed by the Eurasian Economic Union. One presentation will be done by David Tarr, who will speak about Belarus's succession to the WTO, and a presentation by Evgeny Vinokurov on the prospects on the Eurasian Economic Union. I'd like to give the floor to David first. He used to be lead economist of the World Bank for quite some time, has been working with Russia, with the CIS, and it's always exciting to discuss Eurasian economic prospects with him. So, David, please tell us what prevents Belarus from acceding to WTO, and why can't they put together a joint strategy together with Russia under the WTO?
Okay, well, let me first start with my presentation, and maybe I can come back to your question. To
begin with, it is my pleasure to be here at the Gaidar farm. I think this is my fourth farm, and I'm always very happy to be part of all those discussions. I'd like to express my gratitude to Alexander for the invitation. Unfortunately, I don't speak Russian well enough, so I will switch into English now. But my slides are available both in English and in Russian. So I hope you will be able to follow my presentation on the screen.
So this presentation is, the full report is available in Russian on the website of the World Bank. The actual link goes for a full page, so it's better just to Google the name of the report if you want to read it in Russian. It's also available in English on the Social Science Research Network, so if anybody wants to copy that. If you have trouble, you can email me and I can send it to you. The paper is called, in English, Privatization and the Unusual Case of Belarus's Accession to the WTO. So why is it unusual? In Belarus, they believe that they have been implementing commitments of Russia's WTO accession because they're members of the Eurasian Economic Union. So they believe they are, in many cases, and I'll specify more detail what I mean, they are implementing Russia's commitments without getting the benefits of WTO membership, its rights and its privileges of being a WTO member. So in 2010, when they joined the Eurasian Union, the accession process in Belarus was re-energized, and they began to negotiate more seriously again at the WTO. Now, privatization is also something we analyze, both WTO accession and privatization, we analyze through the use of a computable general equilibrium model. These are not the same exercise, they are separate exercises. In some sense, then we compare how much is WTO accession worth to Belarus compared to how much is privatization worth, and contribute to this debate in the literature of the relative benefits of institutional reform versus trade reform. So this model was that we developed and we use in Belarus was originally requested by the government of Russia, the Ministry of Economic Development, for WTO accession analysis in Russia. It was after that appeared, we had requests from the lead trade negotiators in Kazakhstan and Ukraine. And this model was applied in Kazakhstan and Ukraine for their WTO accession negotiations. And also in Armenia, we've applied this model, but more for regional analysis. So now we apply this. The government of Belarus requested the World Bank to do an analysis of WTO accession, and so that's myself and my co-authors, as well as a number of other people who are not on this paper, contributed to this work. As was stated before, the other 4 members of the Eurasian Economic Union are already WTO members. Belarus is the only country of the 5 not in the WTO. So more specifically, what is Belarus implementing as what commitments of Russia it believes is it implementing as a result of being a member of the Eurasian Union? And that it is implementing the common external tariff of the Eurasian Union, which has been agreed by the members will be reduced to meet Russia's WTO obligations. So the common external tariff is going down, not just in Russia, but also, of course, in Belarus. And it's going down to meet Russia's WTO obligations. So also its agricultural tariffs, and not just its manufacturing tariffs, the whole tariff structure. And very importantly for Belarus, it's also reducing its subsidies to agriculture, especially its trade distorting subsidies. And I'll talk a bit more about that. That's very important. So I'm going to skip this slide that details how the tariffs are declining in the common external tariff of the Union and in Belarus, and what will happen what they will be by 2020. But as a result of that, we believe that the tariffs in Belarus will not be impacted by its WTO accession. Okay, so when we're going to do some modeling, we're going to of WTO accession in Belarus. We are going to assume no tariff changes in Belarus as a result of its WTO accession, because it already is dropping the tariffs as a result of Russia's commitments, and we do not believe it will be forced to have lower tariffs than Russia's final commitments at the WTO. So no tariff changes as a result of WTO accession in Belarus. Now, agricultural support is a very controversial matter in Belarus, because if you go back 3 years ago or 4 years ago, Belarus we estimated, was subsidizing agriculture at about 18% of the value of Belarusian agriculture. That's about twice what Russia was subsidizing at its maximum. So it's a very distorted agricultural sector. But again, the Eurasian Economic Union compels Belarus to reduce its agricultural subsidies. In Belarus, the Ministry of Agriculture tells us that they have already cut their trade distorting subsidies in half to about 9%, and they are trying to cut them further by switching to what's called in the WTO green box subsidies, These are subsidies which are not trade distorting, and they are not limited by the WTO. So they're already essentially at a level that should not be affected by WTO accession. So when we implement WTO accession, model WTO accession in Belarus, we assume no reduction in trade distorting subsidies, no reduction in agricultural subsidies. That was a very controversial point, and probably the most controversial point when we've discussed the results in Belarus, but it has been accepted by the Belarus authorities, and that's why the report has appeared on the World Bank website. Because it's essentially the position of the Ministry of Agriculture. It was the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had trouble with that point, but we were essentially just repeating what the Belarusian Ministry of Agriculture told us. So no changes in trade distorting subsidies in agriculture in Belarus as a result of WTO accession. So what will change in Belarus as a result of WTO accession? It was not tariffs, not agricultural subsidies. Well, services commitments. As we heard earlier, there's not a lot going on yet in the Eurasian Union regarding services commitments. But Belarus, in acceding to the WTO, like other WTO members that have acceded, will be compelled, if it wants to be a member, make wide-ranging commitments to foreign service suppliers in services, and business services especially. And that's not just those which discriminate against foreigners, but there are also non-discriminatory barriers will have to be cut, although probably not as dramatically. WTO requires that barriers which affect foreign service suppliers, even if they are non-discriminatory, are negotiable, and they will be cut to some extent. That's important because in Belarus, the private sector is restricted in many ways. If you want to sell a newspaper in an airport in Belarus, you can't do it unless you're a state company. So no airport services can be provided. It's called in Belarus a natural monopoly. Even selling a cup of coffee, it's prohibited if you're not a state company. So these types of, that's an example of how preferences to the state. And those are negotiable and will be negotiated as a part of WTO accession. So significant cuts in barriers in services will be part of the deal if they should get in. And there will also be some reduction in the non-tariff barriers, especially in agriculture, to comply with the WTO sanitary and phytosanitary agreement. Now, there will be some improved market access for exporters because WTO members have improved rights in anti-dumping actions. And there are some cases of Belarusian exporters being subject to anti-dumping duties. But we don't believe this will be significant. My personal view is that anti-dumping is a very dirty business, and as an American, I think it's been our worst export in the world in terms of trade policy is the proliferation of anti-dumping laws. So as a practical matter, there's essentially, at any rate, we assume some small increase in, some improvement in market access, but not a great improvement. So this is a summary of what we model, the changes which we model that I just mentioned. Discriminatory and non-discriminatory barriers in services, non-tariff barriers in agriculture, some slight improvement in market access. And these are our results. And our preferred model is imperfect competition. I'm sorry this slide is, this table is not translated, but we get 9.4, almost 10% welfare gain, we estimate, as a result of Belarusian accession to the WTO, which comes primarily from the reduction in services barriers. Especially we find the non-discriminatory barriers, if we exclude the reduction in non-discriminatory service barriers in Belarus, the gains would only be about 4%. So almost over half of the gains are as a result of the pressure to reduce non-discriminatory service barriers. Belarus has discriminatory barriers against foreign services suppliers, but what's more important in Belarus is the non-discriminatory barriers. There are some sectors where there is no private sector, and there's no foreign supply as well. So unless you attack the non-discriminatory barriers, you won't get more services supplied. So that's the biggest impact, and so it's these. Then we get some gains from the improved market access and the reduction in non-tariff barriers in agriculture, but they are relatively small as a result, as share of the gains. Whoops, what did I do there? Sorry. How do I get this back? Oh, there we go. I'm going to skip the slide on the impacts on sectors, which sectors expand and contract. I'll just mention that we actually see a small expansion in agriculture. Again, this was surprising to many people in Belarus, but it follows rather naturally from the assumption that we've made about what's changing in agriculture. So that's the summary of the results in WTO accession, and I'll just spend a couple of minutes on the privatization scenario. So we received from the Statistical Agency of Belarus, what's called Belstat, an extremely interesting data set that tells us how profitable firms are by whether they're state-owned or whether they're private or they're majority state, not 100% state. So we compared the state companies to the private companies, and we said, what if in each of these sectors, the state share declines by 50% and the private share increases by 50%? And this could be because of a mandated privatization of a state-owned enterprise, or it could just be that the private sector over 10 or 15 or 20 years expands because the private sector is treated equally with the state sector and the state sector is not preferred and not advantaged. So for whatever reasons, suppose the private sector expands and the state-owned enterprises decline by 50% in each sector. The impact is a very, very large gain. We get 36% of GDP, of consumption, I'm sorry. Almost 18% of GDP is our estimated gain. So that's about 4 times what we got from WTO accession, or almost 4 times larger. Now we do this in various, we subject this to various assumptions. We take some of the sectors out of the privatization scenario, and we can get much smaller gains. And we can do this in a perfectly competitive model, which we don't believe is the correct model. And the numbers are smaller, but no matter how we do it, we get very big gains from privatization. So that's the bottom line story. The privatization scenario gives a wide range of estimates, but they're always very big, always big gains. So in conclusion, Belarus has to lower its tariffs and trade-distorting agricultural support due to Russia's WTO accession commitments. And so its own WTO accession will not impact these policies, which are often the key negotiating and points in difficulty in accession. The reduction of service barriers against both nationals of Belarus and foreign investors as part of WTO accession should yield very substantial benefits. But beyond WTO accession, further discrimination of non-discriminatory services barriers, I didn't talk about that, and privatization will yield even larger gains. Thank you.
David, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. Well, look, it seems that one of the conclusions is that the key benefits for Belarus would be reaped not thanks to the change in external trade environment, but due to changes in domestic regulation that is bringing down non-discriminatory barriers with respect to national and international suppliers and privatization. In fact, internal regulation in Belarus appears to be much more appears to contribute much more distortions than any external measures. Now, a question with respect to privatization. You estimated some of the impacts, assuming that privatization will take up 10 to 15 years, and you got about 20% of GDP growth. Does this suggest that such action on the part of Belarus could add to the economic growth in the country another 1.4 to 2% per annum? Now, when you estimated privatization impacts, I wonder if you considered the availability of resources to support this privatization. In other words, how financial sector might contribute or, on the contrary, put barriers to the implementation of this process. We know that many countries lack capital. And what are the sources to bridge this gap? Would international investment be brought in?
Okay, there are several questions there, or comments. The first was that Belarus doesn't have to join WTO to reap most of the benefits, and that comment I agree with. The same was true here in Russia when we did this work. And I sometimes think of WTO, does that mean the WTO is useless? My answer to that is no, because it provides a mechanism in the negotiations that changes the political economy of the reform process. So, in order to achieve reforms in a normal environment, when you're just working at home, you have the vested interests in the industry who oppose reforms, and the consumers are diverse and they don't lobby, but the vested interests in the industry are concentrated and will fight the reforms. So the politicians are generally hearing from the vested interest and who don't want reform. But when you negotiate at the WTO, especially in an accession negotiation, you have the foreign investors who are interested in your markets, who are pressing for the reform. So you have some balance in the political pressures on the politicians. And so the WTO accession process changes the dynamic, and you achieve reforms that you wouldn't get. I don't think Russia would have had such widespread reform in services, or China certainly as well, were it not for the WTO accession process. And then the reforms are locked in under an international agreement, and that means that a regime change which is less inclined, such as the United States right now, what is Trump going to do about China, given that the United States tariffs against China are locked in under international agreement at the WTO? So you have a change in regime, but the commitments are there. So I think there are benefits from the WTO accession process. You hit on a weak point on the privatization story. How will it happen? We don't specify. We're intentionally vague about that in some sense, but whether the financial sector would finance it, whether it will happen over 15 years naturally through just no bias of subsidies toward the state sector, or whether it will be a mandated change in privatization of a state-owned enterprise. We are intentionally vague about that part. So we don't. So you could call it a weak point, but we don't really know. There's no political will for privatization in Belarus right now.
Да, Давид, большое спасибо.
David, thank you very much indeed. Yes, right. We tend to forget that the whole system of the various agreements, including within the WTO, is a sort of additional institutional conditions that help authorities to implement reforms, because this is something that prevents and offsets aggressive sectoral lobbying. And this is what Vice Prime Minister Dvorkovich mentioned when the outcomes of WTO accession negotiations were discussed with him. On the one hand, this is something that helps the authorities to oppose the lobbying efforts, and this is something that forces the authorities to do something. In fact, the membership in the Eurasian Economic Union institutionalizes our commitments and commitments of our partners. And given this, I'd like to give the floor to Evgeny Vinokurov, who is the head of the EDB, Eurasian Development Bank Center for Integration Studies. Well, we're lagging behind the schedule, but that's okay. The discussion is extremely interesting and exciting. Perhaps Evgeny can tell us about some intermediate outcomes of Eurasian Economic Union activities, and maybe he will share with us some vision for the future. Evgeny, please. Thank you, Alexander. Friends, I think I will take up some 6 to 7 minutes of your time. Right. Eurasian Union celebrates 2 years and 2 weeks since its inception. I think it's a good point of time where we can look into the future and speculate what's in store for us in the next 5 to 7 years. Now, this is the most important slide of my presentation. Overall, the honeymoon is over. The honeymoon of the Eurasian integration is over. Something that has happened over the past 5 years was based on the political will expressed by 3 presidents. And thanks to this, the Union leapfrogged from zero to fully fledged customs union and a number of very advanced cooperation areas. And last year, this initial stage of romanticism and explosive growth was over, and now we're entering a lengthy and painful stage. I can even venture to call it a crisis stage of integration process. And this is less exciting, less fun compared to what we used to have in the past. Now, overall, Eurasian Union is a success. No doubt. The customs union is a success, despite all of the teething problems. We have one common labor market, in fact, one of the 2 common labor markets present in this world. That's a unique thing, in fact. We have Eurasian integration institutions in place. We have Eurasian Economic Commission, various economic institutions, Eurasian Development Bank, the Stabilization Fund, and so on. All these institutions are very much alive. They have requisite staff, requisite budgets, so everything is working smoothly with some degree of efficiency. Yet this new stage in our life faces many hidden challenges and problems that might hinder our progress further down the road. I want to emphasize a number of areas where we have to progress in the coming 5 to 7 years. And in red, I will show the key challenges and bottlenecks we have to address. First, we are to make the single customs tariffs to work efficiently and to be applied across the board. There are 2 barriers to this. There is a counter-sanctions introduced by Russia and Kazakh WTO-related exemptions. And this is something that undermined the uniformity and consistency of the single customs tariffs. Second, we are to finalize the development of common markets. In fact, the idealistic objective is to reach 100% common market for goods and services. To achieve this, the agreement specifies a roadmap to finalize those common markets.
To be more specific, we're talking about pharmaceuticals. 1 year later, a package of documents on pharmaceuticals and medical goods has been approved last year, and it is going to be enacted this year. For it to be signed, we spilled the baby. Before 2020, national regimes are going to continue to work, and every country is going to do national certification for pharmaceuticals. This transition period is quite long, and essentially the common market will only get to work after 2020. Common electricity market. Power market. The concept has been approved, but the details have not been worked out yet. Conservatively, we can say that they will agree upon Nord Pool minus model. And the most important thing in this market is futures deals. Financial markets. This is an area where few people have much understanding, and there's a lot of distortions. Everything boils down to common currency and common central bank, which is wrong. It's about common markets for services, insurance, banking, and other areas where everything gets shifted till after 2020, and there is a lot of resistance from national organizations and bodies. And 2025, common market for oil, gas, and related products, quite obviously, because of great influence of these markets on national budgets. This is a very sensitive area, so everybody delays that until later. The expectation is that this market will be created by 2025. Next challenge is integration of non-tariff barriers, which are even more detrimental for trade than tariff barriers. There's a list of barriers that the Commission is working on slowly, gradually. This is hard work. They eliminate one barrier and another one pops up, but that's what economic integration is all about. Fourth, macroeconomic harmonization. There are a few areas for such harmonization, and we have seen a lot of violations in the last couple of years, and many parameters have been violated by all five countries. There is no mechanism for enforcement. There is no way to make a country to comply. If there is no harmonization in macroeconomic policy, then we would end up with a kind of Greece in the end. And fifth area is building free trade zones. The biggest prize is an agreement with China. We have had the fourth round of trade negotiations with them, and future agreement with European Union. For all countries, it's the biggest trade partner, so this would be the biggest prize. But there is a big crisis in relations between Russia and collective West. So summing up, next coming years will be quite difficult for Eurasian integration, but we're not losing hope. We are going to go through a challenging bureaucratic process, and central to it would be how well we will work with national bureaucracies. Right now, the challenges are big, but I don't want to end my presentation at a dark note. Together with my colleagues, we have looked at 62 regional organizations, and we have proven in a quantitative way that those organizations that go through the first round of integration and stay active gets significantly better chances for long-term survival. And from this, I conclude that in the next 5 to 7 years, member countries should invest a lot more in terms of human resources, money, and other kinds of resources for the Eurasian Economic Union to really be effective. Thank you, Evgeny. I think you have given us a very comprehensive picture of the problems that we will face in the development of Eurasian Economic Union. There is one thing that we agree on. There are many approaches to solving problems. Let me also add one other thing, that is application of MFN to Ukrainian goods. There's counter-sanctions, there's the Kazakhstan story, and their accession to WTO, and also Russia using most favored nation tariffs to Ukrainian goods, and not application of such status by other member states. Now I'm going to open the floor for the audience, and we are going to take a few questions. Please use the microphone before you pose a question. I'm Sergey Vasilyev. I have a question for Professor Volchkova. You said you referred to the newest theory. I think about 200 years ago, someone of the name Ricardo has written about it. The facts were very interesting, but I don't think that this is the latest theory. I have a question for Mr. Tarr. I have two questions, actually. Why do you think Belarus is not ascending to WTO? And Russia went through the process of privatization. You have been saying that government-owned companies in Belarus should not get any more subsidies. What is going to happen to them? Will that mean the collapse of the social, economic, and maybe political system in our friendly state of Belarus? Before David answers this question, let me make a comment. Natalia Volchkova, not Volkova, that is the right name. And Ricardo is the author of the classic theory, and we're not saying that this is something new. The newest theory is something else. It's based on the review and analysis of modern companies that have been doing business presently. So there's no mistake there. The effect of redistribution of resources between companies of different performance levels have been addressed by Ricardo. Redistribution of resources between companies in the same industry, between companies with different performance level, highly performant companies and low performance companies, is a new theory which has emerged in 1990s. Today, I can refer to the works of Mark Melitz. I encourage you to familiarize yourself with these gentlemen's works, because it's a very important theory for the world of today. It opens up great opportunities for development of performance results. The analysis of Chilean economy have shown that in 1980s they have improved the performance of manufacturing industry by 20%. On average, the level of performance in Chilean economy was only 6%. That was the growth rate, 6% on average, and the industry in general was growing at 20%. 13% came only from redistribution of resources from low-performing to high-performing organizations. I am familiar with works by Ricardo and with works by Melis. Ricardo did not even touch that. He did not look at companies with a different performance level. He also did not address the issue of inter-industry trade. That was not in the works of Ricardo. This is something that only emerged in the 20th century theory. We have seen a lot of new findings in this theory. Just for the record, in the theory of international trade, there are three main periods. One is a classic theory starting from Ricardo, then the new trade theory that has been developed by Krugman, which addressed sectoral trade, and then the newest theory. So these terms have not been coined by us. These are recognized periods. Now let us give David a chance to answer the question about Belarusia.
Questions. First, why is Belarus not a member of the WTO? This is speculation on my part, in part informed by my experience there, but I think you know Mr. Lukashenko, some of his views. Most of you know of Mr. Lukashenko, and who essentially runs the country fairly. I don't see Mr. Lukashenko as someone who is reform-minded, who wants more market penetration in his country, wants competition from imports, and wants his firms to compete on the world markets and exports. Why did the interest in WTO accession come again in 2010? Why did they suddenly start this WTO accession process more seriously? As I said, they felt that they were already making all these reforms because they're in the Eurasian Economic Union, and they're implementing Russia's WTO commitments in Belarus. So why not try to get the benefits of being a member? That was their view, but actually it has slowed down recently, and the reason it has slowed down is Mr. Lukashenko is now doesn't like the fact that now that Kazakhstan has acceded, and in Kyrgyzstan and Armenia, there are all these exceptions to the common external tariff. And so he's become much less motivated. And so the process is actually slowing down in the last year. Because again, there's no real commitment to competition and using international markets as a means of generating growth. Second question is more philosophical, I think, actually, about what would happen in Belarus if they did go ahead with privatization. Of course, we've seen many countries in the transition countries in this world in the past 25 years who have gone through this process. As you mentioned, Russia has done this. And it means many changes. You're right, of course. There are many models, though, of social benefits, of the social safety net, of pensions and welfare, and it means, I think, more active development of a social safety net that would provide. But different countries deal with this differently. But if you want to have dynamic, growing economy, you need to have firms which are innovators, and state companies do not innovate.
Коллеги, пожалуйста, еще вопросы. Да, вон есть вопрос.
К сожалению, вот
Evgeny Vinokurov has left. What a pity. I wanted to ask him about something. We had an interesting session, Lisbon to Vladivostok, and they talked about building a free trade zone between the Eurasian Economic Union and the EU. And Evgeny said that there's a probability of about 40% that this could happen by 2020. But the gentleman left, and I want to address my question to Alexander, because you work in this field. The previous gentleman has said that today Belarus is the only country in the Union that is not a WTO member. In cooperation with European Union, we pay attention to the fact that not all EU countries are WTO members, and that is an obstacle in the way of many different negotiations, harmonization of technical specifications and requirements, and many other negotiations. Is this really so, or is this just a way to wave away questions? Also, on the matter of possible cooperation with China, do you think the project of bringing together Eurasian Economic Union and One Belt, One Road project together may be viable? Thank you for your question. As of the agreement with the European Union, you are right. There are technical obstacles. EU formally participates in the negotiations. They start negotiations with WTO members. They could start negotiations with Russia, but it doesn't make any sense because a serious agreement may only be signed between EAEU and the European Union, and European Union has not been recognizing Eurasian Economic Union until recently. In the last couple of years, we have seen some negotiations between the EU and the Eurasian Economic Union formally before Belarus joins WTO. Formally, negotiations between the two unions on a free trade zone could not start. Negotiations with the outcomes of such negotiations on a free trade zone could be very beneficial for our countries, and it's not only in the interests of Russia and Kazakhstan, but also in the interests of Belarus. Belarus is important for the EU agenda. For the Eurasian Union, this could translate into 2 extra % of GDP. But much depends on the fact that European Union is a very significant, most significant trade partner for us. One should not think, though, that our interest in integration with the EU is the same as on the EU side, because we are a much less significant partner for them than they are for us. So the big question is what we have to offer to our European partners, even if we could do away with all kinds of political constraints. Our negotiation positions are quite weak, and against the backdrop of this difficult situation in our agenda, the situation gets even more difficult. As of collaboration between the Eurasian Economic Union and China, it's even worse. For China, we are of even less importance than for the European Union, simply because of the size of the trading relations. As of the alignment between the One Belt, One Road project and Eurasian Economic Union, there too we can hardly have much impact on what they do, because we do not have sufficient economic power. We should be looking in that direction. However, we should not illusion ourselves. We should not think that we can have a serious impact on the Chinese strategy. We just have to align with what they're doing. It is doable, but we have to be realistic about our expectations and what success could mean for us. Do we have any other questions? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I suggest that we wrap it up. We are slightly behind schedule. We have taken extra 20 minutes. I hope it has been an interesting 20 minutes for everyone. Once again, thank you very much for participating.